Re- Folks, I've got 10 o'clock. It's time to get started. So we're still looking for some people to, I guess, straggle in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got 6 people here out of the, what do we have, 10? Anyway, I want to welcome everybody to the planning session for the comprehensive plan for Montreat. And thank everyone for being here, and thank you volunteers for volunteering, and all you folks in the audience. Thanks for listening in and so forth. I need one bit of business before we turn it over to Drew. I need a motion to accept the agenda. And the agenda is this sheet here in front of you. You'll see it. Have a motion from Dr. Maurer to for the agenda adoption. Do I have a second? Have a second from Mr. Casper. Okay. Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Changes, additions, deletions? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Now, everyone has received, hopefully, the minutes from the last meeting. I'll entertain a motion to adopt those minutes. Have a motion to adopt the minutes. Do I have a second? Have a second. Any discussion? Additions or deletions? Corrections? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Motion's carry. Angie, are you happy now? Okay. She made me promise to get that out of the way. Well, with that, and looking at the agenda, Drew, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you get started with what you got us to run through today. Okay?
Great. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, committee members, for joining us this morning. As a quick recap, my name's Drew Draper, project manager for this comp plan, joined by Shannon and Katie. We got jump started for folks that might be new here into the room. We got jump started in late January with a kickoff meeting. We started to dive in a little bit to some of the materials, some of the 2008 plan, start kind of that initial feedback with the group. And, since then we've done some more, analysis and review. And then we put together this workbook. And I made a comment to the mayor. I wasn't sure if you knew you were going to be getting homework when you signed up to be a committee member. But we have a pretty heavy agenda today. We're planning to take approximately the full 2 hours to go through this, just getting the materials and going through this workbook. But this is really going to set the stage for us as we move forward through the planning process and we start gathering this initial feedback from each of you. So again, thank you very much for the input you've provided to date. And without further ado, we'll go ahead and we'll dive right in with our folks here and get started today.
Okay, that work? Okay. Okay, well, thank you everyone again for doing your homework. We might end up having more homework for you throughout this planning process, so be prepared. So today we wanted to, I'll just kind of walk through our agenda real quick. Quick welcome, we've already done. We had some great materials sent over by Bill. Wanted to give him a second to kind of walk through those. I apologize that they're blurry in this. It's the link wasn't there, so it printed out weird. But you have had this emailed to you as well. We'll then discuss our kind of relevant best practices that we're going to be concentrating on through this planning process, as well as kind of what we view, and we came up with those after reading the workbook, as well as kind of what our guiding principles are going to be for the planning process, kind of what we're promising you of how we'll be operating this process and working with you. We'll cover the schedule. There's a couple places where we'll want to choose dates, so we'll walk through that. And then we have a initial map packet that we're not going to I'll walk you through it so you know what's in it, but we're not really utilizing it today. We just wanted you to have it just in case, for the rest of the day you wanted to refer to it or anything like that. So that's what this guy is here. Once we do that, Katie's going to dive into a discussion on the 2008 plan. At the very back of your agenda is kind of a little worksheet that we'll all do together. And then after that, we are going to get up and utilize, you guys have sticky notes, a marker, and dots. And that is all for these posters that we have over here. So that is when we'll kind of get out of our seats and start going over some materials. And all the materials we developed that you see on the walls were developed after reviewing all the workbooks. And no one's specifically called out on anything. So they're all anonymous, but just really, we saw a lot of themes and things like that through your answers and want to work through that. So I guess first, so really appreciated, Bill, you're looking into the Planning 101, really, especially this really gives you a look at what all the communities around you are doing with their planning efforts. I would really take a look if you have time when you, after this, at Black Mountain specifically, we think is a really good sample plan for you all and kind of what it was funny because when we pulled it, we hadn't looked at it until Bill sent it and we looked it up and we were like, oh yeah, this is like pretty much what we're going to be doing. So, so take a look at that. And then did you have anything you wanted to kind of say about?
As an academic, I sort of can't leave things alone. My wife leaves me at home for a little while and I get into trouble doing things like this. So I just felt I needed to know the planning steps, a little bit of background before I sat on the committee. And I assumed you would walk us through it. But again, I wanted to do some homework. And even though towns around us are larger, nonetheless, I thought there's got to be some consistency in the process. So it came out blurry, and I guess that's the way planning is supposed to be. So.
Okay, so you've seen in our kickoff materials, so we're on page 4 now, starting at relevant best practices. You guys kind of saw this first little graphic, kind of the planning process, planning inputs and outputs. It's on, okay. So our inputs in the planning process, just for review, is our community engagement, technical analysis, so existing conditions, reviewing previous planning efforts, all of that good stuff, and then combining those with expert review. And all of those together lead to our outputs, which are our values, our visions, and our goals for the planning process. Realistic strategies to achieve, the goals and that are a part of the vision that we want to achieve. And then, always support for funding and implementation. So everything that comes out of a planning process should be implementable. Don't want to talk about things that are pie in the sky or things that aren't really relevant to your community. So that's really important. I'm going to kind of go through each of these little bullets talking about what we at MS, kind of how we view planning as kind of a data-driven as well as community, forward process. We always start with strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in a community. We did that with you with the workbook. We do this twofold. One, to see what the community is on the same page about and what they aren't on the same page about. And then also, we're not from here. This is your community. So, we need to, get some groundwork from you all. And so that's a big part of that as well, as that's just kind of downloading from you. We establish a fact base and current timeline. So that, again, it's kind of your mapping packet. Those are really the existing conditions, hard facts in the community of zoning, land use, housing, transportation, infrastructure. And then within our planning process, we kind of acknowledge the interconnectedness of all of our built systems. So our roads and our houses, these are all things are connected. They're not separate. So that's an important part of the planning process. We kind of use those things to develop a future vision using our shared community values. Within that vision, we're considering key concepts that you will find familiar within the former comprehensive plan. And then, like I said, we're developing goals and strategic actions to achieve those. And our material, the final plan should be very easy to understand, not too word heavy, so that anyone can pick it up and quickly read through it and kind of know the direction that the town wants to go in. And that's kind of our goal within the planning process. Any questions on that?
So I just want to point out that this is kind of in sequence, these steps. And this is a little bit like the flow of how our meetings over time are going to walk through the process and end with a draft plan. So we're early, we're at the beginning. We're looking at assessing strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, which really is kind of based on your perception. And then the next step is that fact base and trend line, where we pull in the data and we ask and evaluate the perception, right? By seeing what the trends have been in Montreat, how Montreat is changing. And then that gives us a really strong basis to develop goals and recommendations. So I just want to point out, it's step by step and it all layers together.
Okay, so we read your responses, and frankly, we were talking like these were the best workbook responses we've gotten from a full committee ever. Everyone was really thoughtful. Good job. A lot of times we either we only get half of them back, and the ones we do get back have one word answers. And so only 2 of them are helpful out of the 20 people we sent them to. So thank you so much. It really helped us and helped us kind of move a little bit more forward and be able to create these activities for you today instead of just kind of redoing a SWOT analysis that you already did. So thank you. So one thing that we realized that everyone kind of agreed on, I guess I'll read out this statement. Montreat is a sustained source of peace and community for those who live, study, and visit in the town. And that this plan should kind of assess how the town is changing and empower the town government to make strategic decisions toward greater resiliency, so that Montreat can, be enjoyed for generations to come from both people who are living in the community, who are visiting the community as part of MRA, who are university students, all that good stuff. In our planning process, we kind of want to just talk about that we are going to be transparent, respectful, and flexible throughout the process. So transparent means that kind of what you see here today, that all of our materials, what we're doing is open to the public. The public knows everything that is happening. We're not planning in a little black box and then things just kind of popping out of nowhere. We respect the spiritual character of the town's institutions while also acknowledging that there are a lot of folks who aren't involved in those institutions that have been moving to Montreat. And so there are definitely, different members of the community who are here for different reasons, and everyone's respectful of each other and wants each other to, at the end of the day, all be successful and enjoy what the town has to offer. And then obviously flexible because we are still in a pandemic. So planning in a pandemic is, challenging. Planning is always challenging. Planning in a pandemic is extra challenging. So also changing state laws are challenging, right, Scott? And that's happening right now too. So, we're being flexible, we're accommodating virtual and in-person engagement, and we're providing clear, strong project management. So that's kind of our planning, promise to planning process to you all, to the committee, I guess. Any questions on that? No? Okay. Yeah. Well, this just gives us more time to concentrate on all the activities. Okay. So we've got, like I just said, we have this process is a mix of virtual and in-person planning. So our stakeholder interviews are scheduled to be virtual. So we'll be having those in mid-April. So that's kind of the first thing you see on your schedule. In early May, this is where I'm going to jump down, I guess, to there's this dividing bar, a little thicker white line right under it. It says email updates and activities. And And basically, as we're working on the plan, because we, as a committee, are only meeting 3 times together, we want to, keep getting input from you all beyond those 3 meetings. So one of the first kind of homework steps you guys are going to have is reviewing the public survey, taking it, saying, emailing us back your comments. Did we miss things? Should we be including things? All that good stuff. So that'll happen in early May. That'll happen we'll do that in April, and we'll release the survey in early May. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So I have a note to myself on question website. We did not include a website in the scope, but we were wondering if a website would be helpful. You all think to posting materials and things like that, hosting our surveys, different online activities? Yes or no?
I think we're going to be transparent.
The people here are not so computer oriented and may be hesitant to react.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe a little bit, but
Both, yes, for sure. So in June, we're going to be here for about a week. We're going to come like a Wednesday to a Sunday, and that's when we're going to have a community meeting. That community workshop is going to be on Saturday, and we're in our heads trying to figure it out right now. Is it an all-day thing where people can come and go as they please? Is it a little bit of both? We haven't worked that out yet. Yeah, are we by the lake? Are we, what's going to happen with that? And we can talk about that.
Everybody, whenever you speak, it's not just the people here in this room. We're doing Zoom also. And they can't pick you up when you're asking questions or making comments unless you have the microphone about like I've got it right now. It's almost touching my bottom lip. If you'll speak into it clearly, I think we can pick it up. You okay back there, Josh? Because Josh is hanging upside his mic. He can't hear you. If he
Okay.
can't hear you, then the people in Zoom can't hear you. Okay?
Yes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I'll try a bite of the ice cream cone then. Is this okay?
Mhm.
It seems to me that the more engagement, the more ways we have with residents and seasonal people, the better. So even though some people are not website savvy, a lot of folks are as one outlet, but I think it would be better to have more meetings than too few meetings with citizens. And I think about there's somewhat of a different demographic that some of us who live here see. Permanent residents on the one hand, worried about the snowplow coming on Saturday morning and so forth. Seasonal residents coming maybe in the summer for a couple of weeks, multi-generational, thinking about how Montreat used to be, and they want to sort of see it one way. So I would think if there were ways to maybe be sure you partition your surveys of the demographic, maybe a citizens meeting in May before the summer crowd comes, another meeting in the summer to give the summer folks ample opportunity and so forth. And even students when they're in session to the degree that, 20 somethings want to participate. So that's
Yeah, we will add that to the list. I know we discussed that. Sorry, I know that we discussed that at the last meeting as well. So more to come on that for sure. Thank you.
But on surveys, that is okay. That is the, that's the way we design them, is so that everyone answers a set of questions, but then it asks about who you are so that we can look at the results filtered according to who answers, right? To help inform that. I think there's a lot of ways to advertise a survey and conduct a survey. Maybe we make some printed copies and make them available and people can mail in answers if you're not comfortable with the computer. If you are, we'll get it out. Everyone here at the table and in the audience has connections and ways to distribute information about what's available for the public to participate in. So we're relying on you to kind of be our megaphones when we have an opportunity for people to participate in that's virtual.
Maybe you've already said this, but building on the comment here with regard to students, I would think it'd also be vital to to survey the employees in Montreat.
Yep.
We have year-round employees. We have 9-month students. I think both have really valuable input. The conference center has year-round employees. There are a lot of people who work here. There aren't many institutions, but we do have people that are stakeholders as well.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's going to be a big push of when we release the survey. We basically release with it to you all a draft email, little marketing materials that you can post on your social media for you to reach your constituencies. And we have, like Katie said, they're asking different demographic questions so that we understand who the person is responding to. That way, when we download all these results into Excel, we can cross tabulate and understand, kind of who's saying what.
When do students leave for the year?
Functionally, the first week of May. Finals and graduation don't count.
Okay, perfect. We will take all of that into consideration and we can talk about, potential additional engagement in late April or to get the residents and students before, what do you guys call them? The summer folk? I don't know. Summer people? The taxpayers come in?
When school's out, that's when the deluge starts.
Got it. Okay. After we kind of finish our public engagement is when we will have our next steering committee that will be virtual on Zoom. We are going to basically be talking about what we heard in the community engagement thus far, and then updating these, which we'll go over this in a minute, kind of giving thoughts to the existing conditions that we've laid out to you in this map packet, which we haven't given you like any analysis yet on this. Again, so we need to choose a date for that. And I didn't know if you all just want us to email you out a doodle poll of how that would work, or the mayor can, coordinate that. But the idea is late June. We were potentially thinking on a Saturday, which I know isn't great, but or an evening. Can Jessica do evenings?
To note on that is we do have a sub-consultant, Trillium Planning, on board, and this was mentioned at the last meeting, and that's Trillium Planning is owned by Jessica Trotman, and she's the current planning director for Black Mountain, and we felt it was very important to engage her as we go through this process, because she's got, certainly, knowledge, local knowledge of of this kind of a local environment, particularly on the environmental side of things. So we wanted to be, aware of her position as planning director, but then so we can make sure that we can utilize her as strategically as possible, understanding her day-to-day activities and role, which is why we were looking at doing something perhaps in the evening or on a Saturday that could, best accommodate everybody.
And really the main reason is she's going to really be focusing on ridgeline protection and things like that. Some of the environmental considerations that Katie and I do not have just as much, practice in as she does. So more to come on that. Like I said, we'll be email updates, different activities for you all as things come up. So potentially a couple more workbooks in your future. In November, we'll have another steering committee, which will again schedule that out via email, but that's really going to be where we've kind of taken everything thus far and start talking about, what we want our goals and actions to be, and talk about the draft plan and all that good stuff. So that's really formulating the plan together. We'll then present that draft plan to town council in December. Looks like December 8th was like the date that worked, just based on council's schedule. And then we do plan to present to the public at a public open house, which will be probably a mini presentation, but then it's, the type of thing where we have lots of boards and things like that, and the public can walk around and learn more about each kind of segment of the plan.
Is the plan in stone at that time? Or is it
Yes,
still fluid?
it's typically in stone at that time, at that open house. But there are going to be, like, the public will probably, there will still be activities and things like that that we could do posted online for the public in between kind of the steering committee coming up with visions and goals and strategies, and the public can kind of give their thoughts on that in different activities as well before that. So
I think Shannon and I might disagree a little about the definition of in stone. I think what's in stone at that point is the outline, the way the document looks, the types of things, the categories that we're making recommendations in, because that work has been, like I said, it's being layered even now. We're kind of laying the groundwork. So it will be pretty final, but that doesn't mean that public input on specific recommendations won't be able to be considered by the committee for revision and review and contemplating edits to the document. But I think the overall document at that point is, it's mostly written, it's laid out, you have it, so that we're really just we're doing the final touches.
So in a previous planning process, what we did is, kind of each section, so housing had a board and there were strategies and goals laid out, and folks, we did the residents were able to kind of choose what were most important to them, and then also add space if they saw something that should have been there that wasn't there. So that's the type of input we'd be collecting at a final meeting like that. Yeah, this town council isn't the voting on it. Town council, that process is after that. So that's just kind of another update on the 9th or on the 8th of December. Okay. Have I been holding this high enough as I talk? Okay.
And so as we kind of wrap up the discussion on the schedule, we've talked about some additional engagement items. And correct me if I might be wrong, but if we're looking at an additional community engagement event, and Mayor, we can talk, following this meeting. We don't have to nail down the specifics right now. We wouldn't see that impacting the schedule because it's going to be done sooner rather than later. So we would still maintain this schedule. We would just add something likely within the April-May timeframe. Is that just wanted to be clear, if we do add these components, it's not going to push the schedule out way into 2023, that this would still be held. And regarding the website, certainly something we can talk about, but we also know that the town has got capabilities to, house materials, on their website, as well. So things we can continue offline, but just want to make that note that the schedule will be maintained regardless of the direction we're taking with additional feedback and where the survey results and other materials are housed.
Good.
Okay, so I'm going to just walk you real quick through this map packet, and then we're going to jump into the fun stuff after this. We collected map. We just did some existing conditions. So Land of Sky and the county have amazing geographic information, GIS systems, and amazing amounts of data. So really appreciate that. And we created some maps for you based on what we heard in the workbooks, a little bit to give some thought to different items. So we've got land use maps, we've got environmental maps, and we have transportation maps on here. So in land use, there's a general points of interest map. These maps, as we go through the process, are going to be, kind of edited and expanded upon, and we'll have thoughts on them, and they'll be overlaid when we're talking about different things. So these are really just individual maps that just kind of show you the types of data that we're kind of collecting in existing conditions, but we haven't really provided any analysis or kind of interconnected visioning of them yet. You've got your zoning and districts in here. This also shows woodland and ridge protection that I think is important, as well as the town center overlay from the last comprehensive plan. So that's on page 6. On page 7, we kind of did a major landowner map to show what the college owns, what MRA owns, and then what our individual property owners as well. And that's on page 7. And then I think it'll actually be interesting to overlay these 2 items. We also did looked at the property ownership. So this property ownership on page 8 is taken from auditor data. So it's based on tax address. So where's someone's tax bill going to? So it's probably not perfect, but we basically looked at whose tax bill is like going to Montreat, like who's living in Montreat all year round versus who's living outside of Montreat. So that was pretty interesting for us. We're going to dive deeper into the data just to make sure each thing is specific, because sometimes tax addresses go to banks, to the mortgage company. So, and that can be anywhere in the country. So we'll look at that. But
How are you defining outside of Montreat? Is it by a certain number of months? Is it like a Florida 6 months in a day? How are you defining it?
It's defined by where the tax bill is going. It's not by time or anything like that. So this data, and there might be other ways like that to identify that we'll dig into, but this specific map is just people who are basically saying my full-time address that I want documents sent to regarding my home is not in Montreat full-time. Yeah. So, I find that pretty interesting because it really does show, the amount of folks who are only coming in the summer. We're also looking at vacant properties, and these aren't always structures. These are also just vacant parcels. These might be undeveloped parcels. I think that we went up into, right, Scott, you took us to one of these areas where not a lot of homes were there yet, but could be on the ridgeline. So that's what that is. So that's kind of the land use data that you have to peruse. And then we've got some environmental data where we just showed ridgelines and protected land. So there's conservation areas within the town. And then there's also obviously ridge protection, and then lots of woodland. So that kind of gives you that basis there. We wanted to show some hydrology and where the floodplain exists within the town. Obviously, since the town has, pretty steep terrain, the floodplain is just kind of at the bottom because there's a lot of streams, but they're all flowing downhill down the mountain. So it's always important to think about, what you're building in your floodplain, what's there, what could be there. Do we want to build outside of it? Is it possible to build outside of it? All that good stuff. We included stormwater information. This gets pretty technical. This is on page 13, but different outfalls and inlets, areas that have been identified as issues within the town. This data comes from Land of Sky, but also very helpful because when you're looking at, where new homes and things like in developments can go, you want to know what's going on with stormwater and water and wastewater. This shows the tree canopy, which is beautiful, all green, bright green map. So not a lot of problems there. Good job. So we're in the mountains. Okay, and then we've got motorized transportation. These last 2 maps, all we showed you in transportation is like a street map of your motorized transportation. And then we overlaid that on the last page, on page 17, with what we call routes that are active transportation. So, we've got our hiking trails, and those are the dotted green lines. Not a ton of sidewalks, which is, we've heard a little bit about, but we did show where those sidewalks exist, and then showed where there were bike suitable roads or bike suitable paths as well. So that's what that is. And I know that might be something, that we discuss more if, the community wants more bike suitable locations and things like that, more sidewalks. I know the streets are pretty tight, so that's always hard, but that just kind of gives you a little bit of that data. Yeah.
Your presentation is going so nicely. I hate to interrupt, and I
No.
really don't mean to be a problem child.
No, be the problem child.
Okay. Two questions. Will these maps be available to us online so we can zoom in on specific points?
Yep, we can do that, and we'll either do it on the town website, or we will do it if we create a project website. So more to come on that, but we'll
Okay.
definitely email it out as
Okay,
well.
that's my general comment. And then back to the hydrology page
Yes.
12. I realize, excuse me, that we have indicated the floodplain, but I'd hasten to point out that's not the only area we would need to be concerned about in terms of a stormwater planning, because if you go to the higher elevations where you do not have a floodplain, nonetheless, when water comes in a heavy rain event, that water comes streaming out at a high velocity before it hits the lower level floodplain.
Mhm.
And we can talk to property owners far upstream that had roads washed out in one of the more recent floods. So I'm just pointing that out as an additional sort of analysis if it's not indicated here.
Yeah, that's great. And those are the types of things that actually Jessica is going to be helping us a lot on, because she deals a lot with a lot of that locally. So yes, thank you for hopefully I'm gonna let Dad-
Between the cover sheet and the table of contents,
Mhm.
the participants page. I know we love John Casper. He's our astronaut, but he has double billing. Why did he get double billing?
Oh. Why did he get double billing? Did we just like copy and paste and not? Thank you for catching that. All right, I'm gonna hand it over to you.
How you guys doing? Everybody good? You've been so quiet. Does anyone have comments or questions before we're going to move into more discussion based? So we're going to start talking a lot less and let you guys talk a little more. Initial thoughts? Okay. All right. So on the last page is possibly future homework, but I want to get us started on 2008 plan review. Last page of the packet looks like this, page 6 with the agenda on the front. You flip it around and you have this table. How many of you have opened the cover of the 2008 plan? Okay. Keep your hand up if you've read half of it at least. Okay. Keep your hand up if you've read the whole thing. Oh, okay. So we have a very informed steering committee. Excellent work. Then you guys this won't need to be homework. We'll be able to have this discussion here. I put some questions at the bottom of some things to think about, but we kind of want to start talking about how the plan is structured, your old plan. This is an update to the plan, but that doesn't mean we need to keep we don't need to keep it how it is. So we want to kind of get some detail from you about your desired revised approach to Montreat tomorrow. Elements you'd like to retain, elements you'd like to change. And we have some suggestions and some thoughts, but I want to hear from all of you too. So, gosh, where to start? Let's just start with like a really deep one. Do you find the recommendations from the 2008 plan to be realistic? Do you appreciate the number of recommendations, and how do you feel that we should approach the concept of recommendations in Montreat tomorrow?
They did the recommendations by section, and I thought that was very helpful. They took each part and then had recommendations, so it was easy to follow. I think that might be a good way for us to do it because there's so many aspects, there's so many components to our growth.
Yep. Thank you. Do you have something, Mayor? Got some thoughts? Chair?
I always have thoughts, whether I need to really share all of them or not, I don't know. The plan is, to me, is realistic. But it's been a long time, and a lot of it is not, to me, some of it is not relevant today. And that's the things I think we need to delete, or at least to discuss whether we're going to include in the plan going forward. Like Maggie, it's well organized, I think. I like the way they sectioned it off also. It's just, you don't have to take it all in one reading. You can sit down and go through section at a time and so forth. As far as reviewing the plan, your plan, I think is very realistic in time and encompasses pretty much everything except for the things that we've added about additional meetings and so forth, and the June versus, full-time residents versus part-time residents and students and faculty and other people who work up here. So there's a lot to be included in the new plan that I don't think the old plan included. So those are just my initial thoughts.
Were any of you involved in the engagement and the process for the 2008 plan that could talk about how that went?
And to note, just as a point that was mentioned at our meeting in January, is that this will really be a revamp of the plan as well. So it won't just be Montreat tomorrow because we're getting new baseline conditions. We're going to be developing, preserving elements of the 2008 plan that are most desirable, and then adding in, new items that we develop through this process. So effectively, you're going to have a complete plan. So I just wanted to make that note, that it's an entire revamp of the 2008 comp plan.
And this is kind of the initial discussion to talk about what that revamp looks like, what parts we keep that you've liked and enjoyed that are useful, and what parts you think need improving as we kind of retool it.
Also, in looking at the 2008 plan versus what we're doing today, I think the plan needs to encompass some versatility or ways to adapt it. I noticed in the old plan that there were certain things that not all of it was done, but perhaps elements of it were done. So it's taking the overall picture under one item and breaking it down to what, a lot of times what the town can afford to do at that time, or what the people really want at that time. If you start something and you start getting an uproar, you don't know, well, maybe we didn't gather enough information at the time to hold that off. So I think the old plan allowed for interpretations within the scope of some of the aspects of the plan, if that makes any sense at all to anybody other than me.
Yeah, I really am an introvert, so I apologize. But at this point, we're just on bullet one, general questions. And first of all, as you look through this, you have to almost think it's a work of art in a sense, just the appearance it makes when you pick it up. I mean, the pictures and so forth. So you can see that people put a lot of work into it. My comments, though, are it almost seems to be try to be an overachiever. So many recommendations, 68 or however many are in that list. And that's an awful lot to ask of a town our size to track all of that. And I think we'll come to omissions later on in the discussion because some notable areas have been left out, in my opinion. So as far as this plan goes, I think it's helpful, it's thoughtful, but it would have been nice maybe to have also scaled it down into a 12-page executive summary or something that any citizen could pick up at Angie's desk and get familiar with rather than try to labor through this.
Please.
I have to agree with Bill. I had the same impression reading through this. Very comprehensive and nicely organized. I like that part of it, but too many recommendations, I thought. And really no attempt made to prioritize even within at least that was I took that away from reading the plan. So Tim, when you get to work on this, what are you looking for?
Well, affordability is a big thing. A lot of times when you put things in a plan, the town has got to find that affordable and acceptable. And the major things that I think a town of our size, especially as small as we are, ought to address, first of all, is the safety and welfare of the people in the community. And that includes the fire protection and the water, clean water, and sewer facilities and so forth. And I don't think we can be everything to everybody. And that's a difficult thing with a transient community like ours. Like Bill spoke to earlier, there are certain expectations by those people who have been coming up here for a week or 2 weeks every year since they were little, and their expectations of those people like us who live here year round. And I think, how does one supersede the other? That's going to be a difficult thing. But affordability, I think, John, is one thing that the town has got to take into consideration when they're considering a plan like this.
And I know this is not supposed to be, this is a strategic plan. It's not an operational plan. So, but I was looking for something, that hinted at the priorities. The only thing I saw was on page 3, a little table where there were community inputs and a scoring system. And, when I look at the top 1, 2, 3, 4 of those, which were, that's what I pulled out was important to people. Preservation of character was number 1. Second thing was growth. The third was tax base and revenue sources. So this gives a feel for what the community felt. And it was curious that even though there was a scoring system, you had to look at it and figure it out for yourself about what the priorities were. And that seems to fit along with the survey also, survey results. So that's what I'm looking for, is maybe we ought to, within each area, think about priorities.
Yeah, I think we have to prioritize, or the town council's got to prioritize what the people want. We did our own survey not long ago. Did y'all ever get a copy of this? Okay, so we did a survey, community assessment survey in February of 2020 that does pretty much the same thing. Angie, if you would make those available to the members of the committee so that they could look at that also. But we've tried to use that to prioritize things, just what people want now in 2020. It's just been terrible though that we had to go from 2020 through a pandemic and now the gas short or gas price hike and so forth. But that's what we've used, and we do the same thing. We prioritize what is laid out there for us, what is most important for the safety, welfare, and future of Montreat. Does that make sense?
Affordability, you mean the ability for the town to afford to provide the services that people are requesting? Is that what you mean by affordability? Are you talking about affordability of real estate? What's your
Combination of the two, Richard? Really, if the town actually wanted to do something, we would have to buy land from you to do it on. But affordability from budget standpoint and from the availability of land to do it on. And Paul, you probably had the same problem with the land. Affordability of land for y'all to be able to do things on up here.
So I think a little context may be helpful. I think I've probably helped write a dozen or so plans. I've read hundreds, and yours is the longest I think I've ever seen. And that has positives. It obviously you hold it and you feel that this place is special and important. I think there's ways to convey that without the length. I also think that you put information in there, you reference policies or laws that change, right, over time. And so providing a short summary or a link to where that information can be found elsewhere is a really nice way of making it more succinct. As far as recommendations, a helpful framework may be short-term and long-term. The plan is meant to guide you for a long time, to think far into the future. And so making an easy list of realistic short-term things that you really want to focus on, you want to prioritize over the next 5 years versus bigger ideas that maybe don't have all the elements of affordability lined up yet, but their goals, their visions. So just to add to your discussion, but please keep going.
So this is a question for you all, related to your experience in working with other towns. I'm sure every town is unique in some respect, right? The most striking in the real estate section, the most striking map to me was the non-Montreat resident property owner piece. Would you say, am I right in assuming that that is a relatively abnormal or unusual map for the kind of people that you, or to kind of towns that you work with typically?
I mean, I think it's typical of tourist communities, and I have worked in a few. I think that you have that creates its own set of challenges that we need to think carefully about. And that's something that, you know, as we looked at the process steps on the page with the data-driven steps, that's really step 2, is looking at the trend line, looking at where we're going, how ownership is changing. And that's just data we haven't analyzed yet, but that information is kind of coming, you know.
I think the potentially a point to make there is that we're like completely different heights. I'm like, is that I think that needs to be a kind of talked about at the beginning. That's part of your vision. That's part of your community, is that you are a place, you know, whether you want to say tourist or, you know, out of somewhere where people come for the summer or whatever, summer community, however you choose to say that. I think it's important for the outset of the plan to set that stage. That our community is unique because of these multiple things, and that's one of them, and that informs our planning process.
I also think there's a lot of things everyone agrees on. And I think we'll see that more and more in the survey with the public. That's my guess. We'll ask the questions in a very open, honest way to assess that. But just from your workbook responses, there's way more things everyone agrees on than disagrees on.
I like the aspect of having it more condensed, a little shorter and a little bit more concise. There's nothing like handing this to a new commissioner and saying, would you read this, and watching their eyes roll back in their head. It's an awful thick document. It's rather foreboding to hand it to someone.
So, yeah, so getting back to your question about what I like or don't like about the plan, just to add on to this, the girth of it and the challenge that creates, I think it creates a real challenge for the town to understand the town. In other words, for the people who own property here, for the people who live here, for the institutions who are here, to understand how it actually operates. I don't think there's a way here that really sort of summarizes that. And so particularly for our town, as complex as it is, as interdependent as it is, which is a word you can hear me use a lot, being able to just take an example, safety issues, for example. If you asked our town residents this week to name safety issues, they might mention marauding bears and dogs.
Yes,
That's been in the news for the last month, right? 2 months. They might not mention fire. In 2015, fire would have been the very first thing at the top of most people's minds. So a document that kind of helps people put into context what our real challenges are, what our real strengths are, what our real weaknesses, and and so forth, I think would be really helpful in a way that we can all digest.
Awesome.
And I would add the survey is going to be a really, really key part of this, and asking the right questions, getting to know the person a little bit who's completing that survey. And, we can handle that with some really strategic questions. Do you live here full time? Do you not live here full time? And I think that'll set the stage. And then when we have all that data, we can really, kind of, crunch the numbers and paint a picture of what that looks like. And that'll really be, folded into this plan is that survey, and also building on the past survey results and kind of seeing how those priorities perhaps have evolved, to what we're going to be doing. So I think that's really going to be the next major, step for us is rolling that survey out.
If I could make a note about my observations of the surveys that we've done, is that the surveys do provide data on what people think about particular issues. Where I think communication is key is helping people understand the context of their answers. When we survey our people who live here and the people who own property here, you're going to, willing to bet that by overwhelming majorities, people will say they want low density and low taxes. And very few townships can pull that off. In other words, we need to be able to communicate, take those answers that are rifle shot answers to specific questions and contextualize them. Once the plan is, we're ready to roll out, we need to contextualize what this information really means so that people understand these questions they're answering are interrelated.
If it helps, my comment on the survey is that it's very exhaustive in an almost academic way that is a little difficult to think about answering. It's a little daunting. I think that maybe I'm a little off, but I think it's okay to have a little fun with thinking about the future and creating a positive, exciting vision. And so the survey should reflect that in a confident, easy to answer way. And so that's going to be our focus in providing you draft questions to think about and talk about before we release it.
It's a lot easier for us to implement when there's a lot of enthusiasm there. So it would be greatly appreciated.
You'll see a little taste of that today with my poster. Hopefully you like it. Okay. Please.
I really appreciate something Richard said, building on what Tim said about the sectors of our demographic. We all realize that we have full-time residents, property owners, and we all realize that we have people who come seasonally who own property and pay the tax bill. But then I think we maybe need to be sure we consider our guests, the 30-odd thousand conferees, Richard, who come for just a few days, or the students who come for a couple of semesters. They might have totally different needs. They might not be aware that there are bears marauding because they're only here for a short time. And their concern will be maybe just traffic at 12 o'clock, and so I wouldn't want us to lose sight of the temporary, or there's a third category, and I can't put my finger on it, but I think it's important so that we're sure that our town is serving their particular needs within our capability to do so.
Do you feel you have feedback from guests who come here for short durations already that we might be able to access and understand?
Well, this is probably there are later places to make this point, but I'll go ahead and make it now. What's interesting about Montreat to me is so much of what people perceive to be public property is actually private property. And so when you talk about guests, to whom are you referring? If somebody who lives here is walking on these trails, they're on private property. Now it's been made public for their use, and effectively it operates as public property. So in other words, again, this is a complex place, right? And we start talking about who belongs, who doesn't belong, who is a guest, who's a visitor. It's a very interesting dynamic that we have to, and I think our primary challenge with this kind of thing, no matter where it turns out, is communicating to people, again, just how important it all is that we're all in this together to make these resources available to those who are here.
Richard has a lot of guests. The college occasionally has a lot of guests. But to me, there are different kinds of guests. There are my family members who come and spend a week or two with us in the summer or whatever. They're guests. The conferees are guests. Then there are people from God knows where and everywhere who come in here to hike the trails, who have no property up here. They're totally guests. I worked at the nature center several summers, and I would have people pull in from vacationing down here from New York who wanted to know which trails were the best to hike or how to get to them. I mean, it's from everywhere. A lot of people from Black Mountain use Montreat as a place to walk. Now, the sidewalk connects the two communities almost, but you know, there's just a lot of different categories of guests. Paul?
Just to build on that, it's probably self-evident. Our nearly 700 residential students on campus are 9-month residents, not guests, not property owners, different category.
Go for it.
Like listening to you all, you know, the different sectors, you know, that I have are, you know, year round, seasonal, students, conference attendees, visitors. So I like, those are the folks who are coming in for a day to hike, or coming in for 3 days for a conference. And then employees also. And in I guess we'll get through this eventually, or we'll keep going through this, but I understand what you all are saying, that there are different types of visitors who are 2 weeks, or, you know, just the weekend or things like that, or just coming in to hike. But those we'll probably end up grouping a lot of those folks together. And I guess the question, you know, that we'll get through this is, are the folks who are coming in just to hike, you know, do we want that, or do we, you know, how insular or non-insular do we want to be? And there's not a right or wrong answer to that, but
There are a lot of answers to that.
I would also say that to keep in mind that the comprehensive plan is a guide for the town government, meant to empower and strengthen the town government to react and make decisions to changing circumstances, primarily through land use, but also programmatic changes or things that you can implement on a day-to-day basis in your work. So we need to be thinking strategically about the type of input we get from visitors and how it matters or doesn't to inform those specific recommendations. Please.
Question. With your data and analysis, is there a way to evaluate, because in 2008, there was no Airbnb, there was no VRBO. Is there a way from a meta perspective to evaluate how that is impacting our rental market here in Montreat?
Yeah, we're going to talk about short-term rentals and try to assess the impact. There's positive and negative impact of those. There's tools that may be of interest that could be implemented to help the town capitalize on some of those visitors. And, you know, even things like parking, that's the whole rest of this process, right? We're kind of identifying the topics that are of most interest to bring back with more detail and to discussing in great depth. But this is great. This is what we need. Okay. So to summarize, we're going to make it shorter. We're going to make it more friendly and easy to understand and communicate. We're going to focus on topic-based recommendations, which I think is great. An executive summary, and an emphasis on prioritizing what's really important in the now, but also in a more visionary way. Did I miss anything big that you want to see in the document? Not specifics of like recommendations quite yet, but actually thinking about our end product here really is a document. Go for it.
I think another thing, you know, hearing you guys talk is, you know, the current plan has, you know, a really nice history of Montreat in it. But I think something you said was really interesting about like talking about Montreat today. So having a section that talks about the present day Montreat of these are the things that make us unique. These are the different populations and things like that. So that will be included as well to give the user kind of a context chapter that I think is maybe not included.
Bill, you had mentioned omissions in the plan. Do you want to share a little bit about what you think is missing?
I appreciate what you said, that this is a town government focused plan, but yet so many, it permeates. So I don't want to say mission creep for the town, but as I went through this, it was amazing when you look at your chart, traffic took 1.5 pages. And that was astounding to me. If that was reflective of the priority of the 2008 plan, traffic. It was just interesting that there was such a focus on that. Things where I didn't see recommendations, I got several actually. One would have been on infrastructure, stormwater maintenance, for example. Another one would have been on environment, the fact that we're a Tree City USA, the fact that we're a Firewise community. And again, I'm not sure where the town government fits in on these things, but it was just interesting as a comprehensive plan. Some things were missing. I know we used to have a Parks and Recreation Department office or something. So recreation, and this really gets to the fact of so many people coming in and using conference center trails, and I've seen the abuse on the trails, so I can see it as a real concern. Couple of other things, and this is maybe a stretch. The arts, do we want Montreat to be an arts community? Town administration, I thought. Are we a fair wage community? Information communications. I don't know that we have an employed town PR person, but I think Tom Widmer handles a lot of that information, and those Montreat minutes come out really well. And then just the whole aspect of social aspects, as well as sustainability. I don't think that word was invented in the 2008 planning process, but now it's all around us. And certainly at some point, we as a committee, and maybe you as a planning team, can bring in how other communities address carbon budgets. I hear the blowers, and we know that blowers, the leaf blowers, are one of the most polluting instruments ever invented in terms of how many cars they're equivalent to on the interstate highway. So, there are some things that sustainability wise are probably worth considering. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you.
Montreat is a fair wage community as far as what the town can do. We pay a fair wage. I mean, that is part of our demeanor, to pay fair wages to our town employees and people we contract with. But beyond that, we have no control over anybody else.
I think there's the unique thing that we will need to work through with respect and inclusivity is the dance, right, between private and public that you have in Montreat. I think you're right that people perceive private land as public, but I also think that you provide services. And so we need to find a healthy and comfortable way to provide a future vision that is implementable by the city, but maybe inspires the whole community. And so we'll get there. We'll get there. Okay. I would like to give you guys some homework on this anyway, even though we filled out the table, which is to read Black Mountain's plan. You all know Black Mountain well. It's right nearby. You've obviously been there. It does a lot of the things that we're talking about doing. So I think it would be inspiring and helpful. I'm not going to ask you to write it up or, send me your thoughts, but it is online, and it's also in the Planning 101 document from Bill, which I'll send out a version that's like clickable with this link that you can get to really quickly. It's on their website. It's called Elevate Black Mountain. Yeah, of course.
It was. I think they adopted it in actually, I think they adopted it in 2021. And, Jessica was she was a key player in that. It managed the rollout of this comp plan. So again, another, I think, valuable, asset to us is to utilize, Trillium planning as we go through this process. So, yeah, certainly, please take a look at that document. Again, no, we were not involved in it. So we're not there's not a pitch there. It was done by a separate firm, but very thoughtful. And I think really does, kind of help you start kind of thinking about the direction that this may go, but understanding that while we may indicate another plan to have a look at, this plan is still unique to Montreat. So we don't want to, pull pieces from that. It's an avenue to help you start thinking about what's more, what's involved in this. And just it's another resource, really.
I would think of it as helpful in terms of the structure of the document, the size of the document, the tone that it's written. Those types of elements you may find useful and instructive for us.
Content isn't as important as, the structure, the design, how public engagement is kind of talked about throughout, just all of that good stuff that, is really not the fault of the 2008 plan. It's also a reflection of how planning has changed in the past 2 decades.
Since this is a really academic crew, I'll send you guys a link to the APA Guide to Best Practices for Planning, for Comprehensive Planning. In 2016, they launched, this is the American Planning Association. So it's where kind of our training is rooted in and the accreditation that comes with the planning degree that I have and Shannon has. They launched a new initiative called Sustaining Places in 2016, and it was designed to provide tools for communities to do comprehensive planning in the 21st century. So talking about changes that may be coming our way in the world, globally, nationally, locally, that communities should be responding to and thinking about. Those best practices are listed. That's where I got this list, considering topics like infrastructure, environment, economy, equity, health, regionalism, all of those concepts. I just want you to feel comfortable that we're operating off of kind of a structure that's rooted in good practice. So I'll send you some more information. Planning 102, if you will. Okay, so let's do some activities. And yeah, let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back and do the posters. Sound good? Okay. Great. Hi, everyone. We're going to ask you to come back. That didn't work. Everyone have a seat, please. We're going to start again. I know. I'm waiting for him. Took it slow. Catalyst. Okay. I made you all sit down just to stand right back up again, but we needed to refocus our attention. So I'm going to start. I'll stand up. I'll walk you through what each of these posters are over here. And then we're going to give you guys some time to complete the exercises. And then we'll come back and discuss. And we'll read them out. Okay? I want to start with this one because this is the more serious one. So these are quotes that the steering committee gave us on the workbook. You may have read this already. It's divided into strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. I didn't change anyone's words, nor did I put names next to the quotes, but you all told us answers to these topics already that we think are really interesting. Maybe some of them are widely acceptable to all of you. Maybe some of them are outliers or controversial. And so we want your feedback on those topics. Interestingly, some of them are listed in multiple categories, both a strength and a weakness. So think about it. Tell us why. You have Post-it notes in front of you. Those are for this board because I didn't want you guys like writing on the wall. So write your thoughts down on the Post-its about what you think, and we'll just pepper the board with your Post-it notes and we'll read them together as a group afterwards and talk about it. So that's exercise number 1. And in green here, I wrote, remember, we have not done our fact finding yet. This is your perception. You might feel like you really want a question answered. Like, well, we'd know if this is a strength, if you would just tell us, X, tell us this fact. Put that down because we'll dig into that in the analysis too.
Would you mind running through and reading since we
Sure.
haven't read them, you might
Yeah.
articulate them.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to add any, opinion. I really want you guys to think about these things. So I'll just read, and I didn't take 100% of your responses. I took the major topics, right? Okay. Strengths. Do you want to help me, Bill? Do you want to do a few with me? Okay. We'll get you your mic since you're sitting closest. Yeah. So we'll alternate here. I'll do the first one. Strengths. People who live in Montreat are passionate about maintaining the quality of life that brought them here.
Strength, tremendous tree canopy, natural beauty, sense of solitude.
Town employees are dedicated to doing their jobs well.
The town provides an astonishing level of service given the demands.
Montreat's historic background.
Montreat feels like a safe place for families.
MRA providing recreational services and drawing in visitors. So next is weaknesses.
Weaknesses, silo mentality, and there are many separate entities here. Sometimes it feels as if they just compete and never the twain shall meet.
Loss of community in terms of permanent and seasonal residents not knowing each other.
More and more week-long and short-term rentals.
Montreat's history.
Organizations enjoy the benefit of town roads and security, but are exempt from paying Montreat taxes.
Okay, opportunities. Possible external funding for stormwater management and mitigation.
I would like to see a viable commercial town center, certainly a restaurant or bistro open year-round.
Reasonable but firm guidelines for future expansion and historic preservation.
Vacation rentals paying their fair share.
I would love to have a dog park in Montreat.
This is a long one.
Sorry.
Both Montreat College and Montreat Conference Center are currently experiencing eras of relative financial stability. If these institutions can sustain and build on these gains, it stands to benefit the community in myriad ways.
Okay, next is threats. So-called global change, such as extreme weather events and changes in vegetation.
Lack of citizen involvement in government, citizen apathy.
Trails seem to be endangered from too much use.
Lack of a broader tax base, which results in insufficient funds for the town's maintenance and improvement needs.
Soil and sediment carried into the Flat Creek watershed by runoff from roadway rights of way and institutional and private property landscapes. Ooh, you guys said a lot.
And how would you like us to respond to these?
So I would like you to tell us what you think is missing in the categories. I would like you to put a check by things you agree with in your marker. They're non-bleed, so just add a little check mark if you agree with one of the quotes and the category that the quote is in, that is a strength or that is a weakness. We're not trying to solve, everyone has strengths and weaknesses. We're not trying to solve all the problems. We're trying to identify where we need to focus and what we need to prioritize. And then on the Post-it notes, respectfully disagree or add something. This is a discussion. It's really open-ended. This is just us telling you what you told us. Helpful? Okay. All right. So you guys are getting to know me. I'm a little bit of like a little silly, so you'll have to bear with me on this exercise. This is called Montreat's reading list. These are each a book, and the book titles represent major topics that at least one of you wrote in your workbook as being something that we should think about or that is of concern in the plan. All of the topics are important. They're obviously important to at least one of you. They're probably important to the plan, but we want to understand what's of most interest. So on this exercise, we're going to ask you to help us determine Montreat's required reading list. There are 4 different colors of books, kind of group them based on their complexity, I think, of the amount of effort it would take to address or think about them in the plan. There's some really big topics. There's some more minor topics. So don't think too hard about how and why they're grouped, but I'm asking you to pick your 2 favorite in each color, which means one of them is not your favorite. So think through that, pick your priorities, and then you're going to get 1 red dot, which you already should have in front of you on a sheet. Red, danger. You get 1 red dot to veto a book that you want to kick off the shelf on the whole thing. You get 1 dot for the board. I'm going to read the titles out, and I really need you guys to laugh a little just so that it feels a little better in here. Okay, the first one, reality check, a balancing act between great ideas and small budgets. Okay, there we go. Okay, once and for all, deciding now where future development can and can't go. Umbrellas out, prepare for extreme storms and more water runoff. That's the green category. In the brown category, we have secrets out. Is visitor overuse degrading the trails and parks? Montreat's green thumb, looking for ways the town can practice environmental sustainability. And this is one of my favorites. It's all fun and games. Partnerships for maintaining parks and playgrounds. Okay, in the red, we have potholes be gone, keeping our roads in a state of good repair. This is another favorite. Here for a moment, how vacation homes and short-term rentals can be regulated. Thank you. Driving You Wild, a plan to calm traffic and make it easier for people to get here without a car. In blue, we have Cup of Joe, how Montreat could attract a coffee shop, restaurant, or other small commercial use. Camouflage, how brand new buildings and homes can blend in. And Don't Walk Away, a plan for connected trails and sidewalks. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so these are all, some of these may be controversial ideas that you don't agree with. You can tell us that by using your red dot. Some of them you may really, really like. You can tell us that with your check, okay? The red dot will tell us that that's a more controversial concept. Right, yes. All of these topics are important. We need to talk about the things, but this helps us just kind of first, it helps all of you understand each other too. You're all a team working on this project together, but it also helps us understand what topics we really need to make sure to emphasize in the public workshop and the survey, what things are really of super importance and priority, and what things we maybe need to, think carefully about the best way to explore based on its number of red dots. Okay. Doesn't mean you're like, that we're not going to talk about it. Okay. The last one is a fill in the blank. Did anyone ever play Mad Libs? Yeah, this is a Mad Lib. So these are sentences with holes in them, and we're asking you to fill in the hole in the sentence just by writing, like you can write a little phrase that takes up a part of the line that would fill in your blank. And so everyone's going to do this, and there'll be multiple answers so that we see what you all think. Yes, I think so. You could use a Post-it if that's more comfortable. Okay, so yeah, and you can check mark each other's. Yeah. So it's the town of Montreat is blank because of blank. In 20 years, I want people to say blank about Montreat. We can honor our town's unique history by blank. We can embrace the future by blank. I value our town's public services like blank and would like to see blank if possible. It is important that our government consider issues like blank in the future. Even though people sometimes disagree about the future of Montreat, especially about blank, we all seem to agree that blank and blank is important to Montreat's future. Okay? So we have a half an hour. We'll give you 15 minutes to do the 3 activities. And then we'll come back and we'll just quickly read them and summarize them. And if you're done sooner, we'll start sooner. Okay? Thank you all for your participation and enthusiasm. We appreciate it. All right, everybody. So in our last few minutes together today, I'm going to just read out what everybody added to the boards. I don't know the best way to do this. I guess I'll just, review it a little bit and then we can leave these up. We'll take photos and we'll leave them here. So for strengths, it looks like there was a lot of agreement on people who live in Montreat are passionate about maintaining the quality of life that brought them here. History, the MRA providing recreational services and drawing in visitors. We have a few comments. One said Montreat's history. One says strength, a long and colorful history of families, church, and visitors coming to the valley for generations. Another says, once historical buildings are gone, the loss is permanent and sad. This goes for old trees too. I feel that that's maybe a threat. I'm going to move that one down to our threats category. Okay. For weaknesses, we have some check marks on a few of these, but not a lot of check marks. No one likes to admit their weaknesses. It's okay. Some new ones are added. Lack of awareness of zoning and history in the community. Its scale in terms of tax base. The short-term rental / visitors can potentially disrupt our quiet, peaceful environment, and they must be regulated. Nonprofits exist to serve the common good, not for the financial gain of owners and shareholders. Tax exempt status is, ooh, someone's handwriting. Good law. Tax exempt status is a good law that should be protected. Okay. Opportunities. We have, again, just like a couple check marks, not more than 2 on anything. So I'll just read off the comments because we have a lot. For opportunities, town should explore new development as a means to expand its tax base. Historic preservation is too restrictive. I think that's probably a response to someone else's comment. Secure outside consultant to assess revenue dilemma and sources. Building resilience to extreme rain events and storms. I can't read this one's writing. I'm sorry. Who's ever comment that says we're going to have to come back to it. This one says, this is a person who disagrees with the comment about the viable commercial town center and the restaurant and bistro, saying, I don't see community support for this. Coffee shop, perhaps. The dog park, this could alleviate a safety issue with fewer people walking dogs in the road. And then the 2008 plan recommends a town center. It's a great idea if managed well and for the benefit of all of Montreat. Okay, lastly, for threats. Everyone seems to agree on lack of a broader tax base, which results in insufficient funds for town maintenance and improvement. Someone disagrees with lack of citizen involvement, saying they see a lot of city involvement and disagree with the statement. The tax base is stagnant, but the services are increasing due to visitor influx. Environmental issues are of great importance. Okay, so a lot to digest and think about that I can't do on the fly. So I'm just going to read your comments and leave them here and we'll process. Okay. Reading list. Gosh, it seems like you guys liked the titles. Good job. Okay. All right. We can have some fun together. All right. So we have reality check, balancing act between great ideas and small budgets, and once and for all deciding now where future development can and can't go. Rise to the top as the 2 most important books in that category. There's a little more of a split vote in some of these, but this one's the same. Secrets Out is visitor overuse, degrading trails and parks. And it's all fun and games. Partnership for I love that I get to read these twice now. Partnerships for maintaining parks and playgrounds. So those 2 came up. In this next category, we have state of roads in good repair, or roads in a state of good repair. And then we have vacation homes and short-term rentals coming to the top. 2 no votes on driving you wild, a plan to calm traffic. Over here, we have Cup of Joe. Kind of does. I mean, two of you disagreed. Yeah. To think more about. Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, that means two people disagree with that. If anyone who put a red dot on it wants to share why, you're welcome to add to the discussion, but you don't need to. Got to use the mic, Mr. Mayor.
We talked about putting a stoplight, not a stop sign, but a stop light up at the post office. Yeah, that went over like a lead balloon. That's what I'm saying. It's difficult to regulate the traffic. A lot of people don't like the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit either, but it is what it is.
Okay. So we have strong opinions on that. We'll be digging into it in more detail. Seem to be a lot of check marks for how Montreat could attract a coffee shop, restaurant, or other small commercial use. Good check marks, strong check marks on camouflage, how brand new homes and buildings can blend in. And then the one with the most no votes and controversies is Don't Walk Away, a plan for connected trails and sidewalks. Does anyone want to share why they put a no vote on that one? You don't have to. Sorry, putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I'll comment. I guess that's to put one for the least favorite, and that's just not a high priority.
Okay.
I think with all the other things on our plate, it'd be nice, thing to do, but I don't think it's the highest priority.
Okay. Yeah, that's really helpful. Okay. Same reason. All right. So maybe it's just the thing that rises to the top of the least. Go ahead, Richard.
In the middle group, lower middle group, the one on the right, will you read that one out about regulating rental property again?
Here for a moment,
Yes.
how vacation homes and short-term rentals can be regulated.
Yep. So I found it interesting that received no red dots. And I would suggest that if there were a different collection of taxpayers here, that would be a big red dot fest.
Yep. Good thing to ask about in the survey. Get into more detail on. Okay, so this one, I'm just going to read everyone's answers. And then, Mayor, I would really like to leave this with the town, and maybe you guys can put it up somewhere for other people to add to, whether that's in this building or, post office, what have you. I think that'd be a nice way to get
And if
more
you'll
input.
make sure that we put that up somewhere where people coming into town hall can see it and add to it, appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have the town of Montreat is a great place to live and visit because of people, environment, and character. In 20 years, I want people to say that Montreat has grown in a positive fashion and that Montreat figured out how to grow and thrive. That's great. We can honor our town's unique history by preserving it. We can embrace the future by developing a more robust tax base, building collaborative ways to solve challenges, and being open to change. I value our town's public services like garbage pickup, police, and water, and would like to see less pickups if possible. It's important to me that our government consider issues like growth, revenue check, and road maintenance in the future. Even though people sometimes disagree about the future of Montreat, especially about growth and change, we all seem to agree that change and history and adapting and natural surroundings are all important to Montreat's history or future. So change maybe is a bit of a difficult thing for us to think about. All right. Well, I think everyone's always changing. So that's part of our next step is to do that fact-based, dig into the data and understand the trends that have occurred. So that'll be the content of our June stakeholder meeting. You'll hear from us and see us again as we communicate building up to the public survey. Okay. So with that, I thank you all very much for your openness and your willingness to participate. And is there anything formal we have to do to close out, Mayor?
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. I have several. Josh, was that a vote to adjourn? All in favor signify by saying aye. We stand adjourned. Thank you.